She wept at an empty porch, her tears washing down like the soft rain that began to fall, each drop mingling with the sadness in her heart. The old wooden boards creaked underfoot as she hugged her knees, rocking gently back and forth. She looked out at the dusty road where memories danced like ghosts in the fading light. Just then, a figure appeared through the rain, a cowboy on horseback, his hat pulled low to keep the droplets out of his eyes. He slowed as he approached, his horse snorting softly, its breath swirling in the cool air. The cowboy paused, taking in the sight of her alone on the porch, sorrow draped around her like a tattered shawl. He dismounted, his boots thudding softly against the ground as he walked toward her. She didn't respond, but the way her shoulders sagged told him everything he needed to know. He sat down beside her, the two of them now sharing the emptiness of that old porch, where once laughter and love may have lingered. "I can't believe he's really gone," she finally whispered, her voice barely carrying above the sound of the rain. Her words faded, swallowed by grief. The cowboy nodded, understanding such pain all too well. "Life can be cruel," he murmured, glancing up at the overcast sky. He shifted slightly to face her, his eyes steady and sincere. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks as she wiped her face with the back of her hand. "More than I thought I could love anyone," she admitted, staring down at her hands. "He was my everything. The memories stick around like the rain," he replied, his voice low, "but they won't drown you." As he spoke, she looked over at him, sensing a depth in his words. In that moment, she could see the shadows of his own past, the weight he carried, not just from this day, but from days long gone. She asked softly, her curiosity piqued. "I lost my brother a few years back," he began, his voice calm yet tinged with sorrow. "We were close, and losing him felt like losing a piece of myself." He paused and took a breath, the memory heavy in the air between them. "But in that pain, I found a way to honor him." She considered his words. They hung in the air like the mist that began to swirl gently around them. She asked, leaning slightly closer, eager for his wisdom. "I kept his spirit alive," he replied with a small smile. "Every time I ride, I tell stories about him, about our time together." He glanced away, lost in thought for a moment. I could feel the sun on my back or the wind in my hair. The rain lightened as they spoke, and she felt the warmth of his presence beside her. "I don't know if I can do that," she said, her voice wavering. "It all feels too heavy." "That's okay too," he assured her, his tone steady. "Grieving is not a race. Sometimes you just need to sit with your sadness." He paused, looking up at the sky as if searching for something in the cloud-covered horizon. "But after the rain, the sun always shines again." She nodded, feeling a flicker of hope begin to warm the corners of her heart. "When I moved here with him, everything felt alive." "Dreams are what keeps us going," he responded, his voice soothing. Slowly, she began to share her dreams, the little things that once brought her joy. "We wanted to start a garden right here," she gestured around, her voice gaining strength. "He loved the idea of growing our own vegetables. We'd have barbecues with friends." The cowboy smiled knowingly. "Sounds beautiful. Perhaps you could still do it." The thought swirled like the light mist in the air. She asked, her voice a mix of fear and curiosity. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Every plant, every flower would carry his memory. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the vibrant garden bursting with life. "But where do I even start? I mean, I've never done it before," she confessed. He looked around, scanning the empty yard. "Some herbs on the porch would be good for you. A little rosemary, maybe some basil, easy to care for, and they smell amazing." As he spoke, her heart lifted a little more. "I could do that," she said, her voice brave now. "Exactly," he said with a grin, his confidence contagious. "And as they grow, so will you. In time, you can expand to vegetables." The rain began to fade, leaving a gentle drizzle that tapped rhythmically on the roof above them. She felt a hint of warmth seep into her bones, like the promise of hope unraveling deep within. She asked, curiosity bubbling. The cowboy leaned back, considering her question. He smiled at the thought. She turned to him, a flicker of something deeper igniting between them. "Do you think that's possible? It's hard, sure, but letting someone in." "It's a risk worth taking," he said, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "To find someone who knows loss can be a bond that helps heal." As the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting golden rays over them, she felt the warmth both outside and within. She asked, vulnerability spilling from her heart. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple act of comfort. "You're strong. Love doesn't disappear, it transforms. It's never gone, it merely changes shape." A breeze swept through the porch, rustling the few leaves left on the nearby trees. She took a deep breath, letting the fresh scent wrap around her like a warm embrace. "I do," he said, his voice firm yet softly assuring. "The moments we share joy, laughter, they remain part of us." As silence fell between them, she held onto his words, weaving them through her thoughts. The hope he sparked felt fragile yet undeniable, little by little anchoring itself in her heart. Maybe. "I will start that garden," she finally said, a smile breaking through her somber mood. "Then it's a step worth taking," he replied, genuine warmth radiating from him. She laughed softly, the sound foreign yet beautiful in the space of sorrow. The clouds cleared more and the day started to brighten. "You've got spirit," he said, his eyes glimmering with encouragement. Together they sat on the quiet porch, the empty spaces between them filling with shared stories and promises of new beginnings. In the fading light, she felt the heavy darkness lifting, replaced by the welcoming glow of hope intertwined with dreams, memories, and the resilience of the human heart. She wept at an empty porch, the sound of her sobs mingling with the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was a quiet place, one where laughter used to echo against the weathered wood. But today, sorrow clung thick in the air, heavy with memories. The sun hung low on the horizon, its gold spilling over the fading landscape, casting a warm glow that stood in stark contrast to the chill in her heart. The porch creaked, almost as if it mourned alongside her. She hugged her knees tightly, the worn fabric of her jeans absorbing both her tears and the weight of her grief. Just beyond the wooden railings, the tall grass swayed, whispering secrets of happier times when life felt easier, when love filled every corner of that little home. As the shadows grew longer, the sound of hoofbeats broke the stillness. A cowboy appeared on the dirt path tall and lane, his silhouette framed against the setting sun. His hat brim shadowed his face, but even from a distance she could feel the quiet strength radiating from him. He slowed his horse, a gentle creature that seemed to sense the pain in the air. He called, his voice deep and rich like the earth itself. She looked up, squinting through her tears, unsure whether to answer. Strangers rarely intruded here, and yet there was something about him that felt safe. I've lost someone, she managed to reply, her voice trembling like the branches overhead. He dismounted with ease, tying his horse to the post before stepping closer to the porch. Is that so? She nodded, unable to find her voice again. He settled down beside her, the old wood creaking under his weight. Even as clouds gathered, her heart felt a slight lift, a strange comfort in his presence. Tell me about him if you want, he encouraged, his tone sturdy yet gentle. Grief poured out of her like a broken dam. His name was Jake. We built this place together, every board and beam. He was. The words tasted bitter on her tongue, the ache unmistakable. The cowboy listened closely, nodding slowly, his gaze steady and sincere. Grief can feel like a heavy stone dragging you down, he said. She looked down at her hands, tracing the patterns in the wood beneath her. A moment hung between them, thick with unspoken understanding. Sometimes I don't know how I can keep going, she confessed, vulnerability creeping into her voice. Life's colors can fade when we lose someone we love, he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. But you've got a well inside you, a well full of everything you shared. Her breath hitched as his words settled deep within her. It won't, he said firmly, leaning a bit closer. Each memory we share is a drop, and sometimes it feels like it's all gone. But in time, you'll find that some stones hold water more than others. As the shadows shifted, she felt the weight of her sorrow transform, if only slightly. She challenged, a hint of defiance rising in her. He smiled softly, an expression that softened his rugged features. I lost my brother a few years back. We were thick as thieves, sharing both our dreams and our burdens. When he was taken from me, it felt like I lost part of my soul. Her voice trailed off, unsure how to finish the thought. He offered, his eyes narrowing slightly as he remembered. It wasn't easy. I learned to ride again, to roam the plains he loved. Each ride felt like a conversation we continued, carrying his spirit with me. His words hung in the air, woven with honesty and strength. Maybe that's why I'm here today, he continued. I've traveled these roads for weeks, and something led me to this spot. She felt a flicker of warmth bloom in her chest, a small fire ignited by the cowboy's story. I used to dream of having a garden with him, she shared, the idea spilling out in a rush of recollection. That sounds beautiful, he said, a glimmer of enthusiasm in his voice. She hesitated, caught in the uncertainty of her own mind. What if I fail? Life's a gamble, even in the garden, but marking out a space to grow, to create something new. That's how you revive the joy he brought you, he encouraged. The rain began to sprinkle down again, a fine mist that danced on the ground. You could honor his memory. I've never done anything like that alone, she admitted, looking out past the porch at the vast empty land. The cowboy's voice was steady, full of conviction. Maybe start small, a pot on the porch, some herbs to begin with. As she considered his words, the storm clouds gave way, revealing patches of blue sky. She asked, a flicker of hope igniting. He matched her gaze, his eyes sincere. I know so, it's not about the size of the garden, it's about your heart. The idea stirred something inside her, a yearning for connection, the kind of connection that could weave memories into something tangible. Then you try again, he said, unflinching. The most beautiful gardens are filled with flaws, yet they bloom beautifully regardless. Each failure becomes a lesson, each lesson a step forward. A smile crept onto her lips, tinged with hope as the sun broke free from behind the clouds. She asked, disbelief and wonder entwined in her thoughts. Without a doubt, he replied, a warmth in his smile that felt both protective and encouraging. As the light cast golden hues around them, she began to imagine that garden coming to life right there on the porch, vibrant greens and reds peeking through the earth, scents of rosemary and thyme teasing her senses. She asked, curiosity replacing her earlier sorrow. Ethan, he replied, his voice steady. Clara, she said, surprised by the softness that came with saying her name aloud. Well, Clara, maybe it's time you take that first step, he said, rising from the porch. He brushed off the dust from his jeans, the sun glinting off his worn boots. The offer hung in the air, a lifeline thrown at just the right moment. She asked, astonished, "Why not? Life's about sharing." Clara took a deep breath, courage awakening within her. "Okay, let's do it. Let's start small." Ethan grinned, a genuine brightness lighting his features. As he stepped away to mount his horse, a rush of gratitude swelled in her chest. "You really changed my day," she said, her voice catching slightly. "No, Clara," he said, pausing, "you changed your own day." With that, he rode off into the distance, the sound of hooves and the soft whistling of the wind fading into the horizon. Clara sat there for a moment longer, absorbing the warmth of the sun on her skin and the stillness of the evening. The porch no longer felt empty. It breathed with promise, filled with whispers of growth and that first step, one that she was finally ready to take. As she imagined her garden blossoming, she realized that each petal, each fruit would carry a piece of Jake's spirit. Life, with all its heartache, still pulsed with possibilities. Tomorrow wouldn't erase her memories, it would honor them, turning pain into beauty. Clara brushed away the last of her tears, determination blooming in her chest like the first buds of spring. There would be laughter again, perhaps even joy, a garden of memories waiting to grow on that empty porch. She wept at an empty porch, the sound of her sobs echoing into the quiet evening. The wood beneath her felt worn, like old scars from years of memories, each creak beneath her weight resembling a heavy sigh. Just beyond the railings, the sunset spilled fiery colors across the sky, a beautiful backdrop that felt oddly out of place amidst her sorrow. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She had imagined laughter filling this porch, not the weight of grief smothering her. Each tear she cried felt like a small part of the world she had built with him, the smiles, the dreams, the plans for tomorrow slowly slipping away. As her gaze wandered to the dusty path that led away from the porch, she heard the sound of hooves crunching over gravel. A lone cowboy appeared, riding a chestnut horse that kicked up a swirl of dust into the fading light. His silhouette was striking against the backdrop of the sunset, a tall man wearing a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, the lines of his face etched with both strength and sorrow. He slowed his horse as he drew closer, and even from a distance she felt a strange sense of calm radiate from him. He dismounted with ease, tying his horse to the post before approaching with measured steps. He asked, his voice deep and soothing like the murmur of a river. She hesitated, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, unsure if she wanted company, but the kind depth of his eyes urged her to nod. "It's just an empty porch," she replied, her voice shaky. "Empty doesn't always mean alone," he said, settling down beside her. He glanced out at the road, as if looking for answers in the fading light. "This is a good spot to talk if you want to." She took a shaky breath, the warmth of his presence a contrast to the chill in her heart. "I lost him," she said, each word a struggle as it fought its way to the surface. "Jake was everything." The cowboy nodded, his expression turning serious. "Grief can sink deep into the bones. The kind of pain you're feeling is not just sadness," she asked, her curiosity piqued despite her grief. "I roam these parts looking for lost souls and stories," he said, his gaze fixed thoughtfully on the horizon. The night air was thick with an electric honesty. There was something about him, a warmth that felt serious yet inviting. "I can't see a way forward," she admitted, the vulnerability spilling over her defenses. "It feels impossible." He looked at her intently. "You don't have to find the whole path at once," he said. "Take a small step at a time." "Hope feels far away," she replied, staring at the ground. "I can't imagine a world without him." "Hope is often hidden beneath the surface," he explained gently. "When we feel the worst, that's when hope learns to shine the brightest." As they sat in silence, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky a vivid orange and pink. She asked, a hint of skepticism lacing her tone. "I know it's fragile," he said. "I lost my brother a few years back. We grew up doing everything together. Anyone could see we were two halves of a whole." Her heart ached at the raw honesty in his words, resonating deeply with her own pain. "It wasn't quick," he replied. "I wandered for a long time, feeling lost in the world, but I learned to ride again, not just to escape, but to honor him. Each ride became a tribute, a way to hold on to our memories." She asked, turning to face him. "Maybe," he said with a nod, "but those stones can also build something new. The memories don't disappear, they transform." She pondered this, the ideas nesting in her mind like quiet whispers. "But I don't know how to keep his memory alive. I don't know how to begin again," she confessed, her voice barely breaking the stillness. "Maybe start with small things," he suggested, leaning in with sincere curiosity. "We talked about starting a garden here," she said, glancing back at the empty yard. "There you go," he said, his enthusiasm palpable. "Why not turn that dream into a reality? Even the smallest garden can hold so much meaning." She whispered, the doubt creeping in again. "Then you learn," he responded simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Starting a garden is more than just about plants, Clara. It's about growth. When you nurture something, it helps you heal." His words hung in the air, offering a new way to look at her grief. She asked, feeling a flicker of enthusiasm catch in her chest. "I know it," he asserted, his eyes shining with conviction. "You've shared love that never truly goes away." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the porch, she thought of tiny seedlings breaking through the soil, stretching toward the light. In that moment, the weight of sorrow felt a little lighter, nudged aside by the possibility of growth. She asked, the hint of fear still present in her voice. You'll find help, he said confidently. You're not alone in this. Life is full of connections, people who care, who want to lend a hand. As if on cue, the chorus of evening crickets began to chirp softly, filling the silence with a new rhythm, a heartbeat of nature that felt alive and welcoming. The cowboy smiled, the fading light accentuating the resolve in his eyes. I'll come back tomorrow if you'd like. She asked, her disbelief tinged with growing hope. Why not? It won't cost me much, and I guess I'll be around. He rose from the porch, dusting off his jeans, the sun now nearly set, casting a warm glow around them. I'd like that, she said, her heart lighter than before. Thank you for. You're welcome, Clara, he replied, the sincerity in his voice wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Just remember, tomorrow is a new day. With a final glance back, the cowboy mounted his horse, and she watched him ride into the night, each hoofbeat echoing in her heart as he disappeared down the dusty road. She felt the air shift, the porch no longer an empty, hollow place, but a canvas waiting to be filled with life and color. As she gazed at the horizon, a sense of purpose started to blossom within her, intertwining with the remnant pain that still lingered. Jake would always be part of her, a love woven into every seed she would plant, every plant she would tend. She wiped away the remaining tears, resolved to find that flicker of hope hidden beneath her sorrow. With a deep breath, Clara stood up, feeling the sun's last light on her face. Tomorrow would come, and with it, a chance to begin anew. The porch wouldn't just be a place for memories, it would be a space for growth, for life, the kind of life that Jake would have cherished. No longer an empty porch, it was a starting point for her journey, a journey where loss and love would weave together, filling the air with the scent of fresh earth and blooming possibilities. And somehow she knew that she wasn't alone. She had new steps to take, seeds to plant, and a beautiful garden to grow. She wept at an empty porch, the weight of her tears soaking into the wood beneath her. It was a cool evening, the kind where the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like ghostly fingers across the yard. Laughter once flourished in this space, but now it was filled with memories that clung stubbornly to the walls, reminders of what once was. The porch had seen better days. A worn swing creaked gently in the breeze, swaying as though trying to share in her sorrow. She hugged her knees, her heart heavy, each sob a reminder of everything she had lost. Her fingers traced the grain of the wood as she let the feelings wash over her, an overwhelming tide of grief that felt as endless as the sky above. Just then, a soft noise broke through her thoughts, a sound like booted footsteps on gravel. She barely noticed at first, too engulfed in her own despair. But the footsteps grew closer, and she looked up to see a silhouette approaching. A cowboy, tall and weathered, his hat pulled low against the soft evening light. He asked, his voice deep and smooth, rich like a warm whiskey. She studied him for a moment, unsure of his intentions. But there was a quality about him that felt safe, a quiet strength that tugged at her curiosity. She nodded, and he took a seat on the edge of the porch just a few feet away. He remarked, squinting into the distance where the sky met the land. It could be, she replied softly, wiping her eyes. He nodded, understanding, lacing his features. Sometimes life feels empty after loss. The fact that he didn't press for details was comforting. It made the space between them feel less like a chasm and more like a shared burden. I lost him, she finally confessed, the words tumbling out like stones from her heart. Jake was everything. He built this place with me. Now it's just... A shadow crossed his face as he absorbed her words. Grief is a heavy weight, he said. It can feel crushing. She looked at him, searching for understanding in his eyes. It feels so wrong without him. The cowboy shifted slightly, his gaze steady and calm. You're not alone in this. It's perfectly okay to feel lost. There was something about his clear, confident voice that reassured her. She asked. I did, he replied, his tone shifting slightly, almost melancholic. Lost my brother a few years back. We were inseparable. She asked, drawing closer, her heart aching at the thought of such loss. He took a moment, looking out at the horizon as if searching for the right answer. I rode a lot. Riding was our thing, but without him, the trails felt empty. She wondered, her voice small. Some days it did, he admitted, a faint smile breaking through his sorrow. Other days I just had to sit and cry. It took time to understand that grief isn't something to rush. As he spoke, a soft breeze rustled through the trees, bringing with it the scent of coming rain. She asked, her curiosity piqued. I still ride, he said, pride returning to his voice. With each mile I try to honor his memory, the stories we shared, the dreams we had. His words resonated deep within her, igniting a small flicker of hope she thought had been long extinguished. She pressed, needing to know how she might step forward from this moment. It wasn't easy at first, he replied, his tone steady, but I realized that I could still carry him with me. Each ride became a way to keep those memories alive. She asked, her interest piqued. Think about what you two love to do together. He prompted gently. She hesitated, the memories flooding back, the shared laughter cooking together, planning a future that now felt infinitely distant. We talked about starting a garden here, she said slowly, as if testing the thought. He suggested, a spark in his eyes. Begin small, a few pots on the porch, herbs maybe. Each time you care for them, you nurture your memories. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were tinged with something else possibility. I don't know if I could, she admitted, her voice trembling. Then you learn, he stated simply, his voice unwavering. Failure is just life teaching you to try again. The best gardens are filled with mistakes turned lessons. She sat quietly, absorbing his words, the wisdom they carried, the kindness in his heart. She asked, feeling a flicker of warmth coursing through her. I do, he replied, his gaze unwavering. You love deeply, and love doesn't just vanish, it evolves and takes new forms. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in stripes of violet and gold, she felt herself opening. The emptiness of the porch began to shift, made less daunting by the promise of new beginnings. She mused, her voice laced with uncertainty. Then reach out. You'd be surprised at how many people care and want to lend a hand, he encouraged, his words imbued with sincerity. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of the impending rain, a refreshing reminder of life cycles. Clara felt a small thrill at the idea of starting something new. You're right, she finally said. I could reach out. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling with genuine warmth. Then why don't we get started? She asked, disbelief mixing with hope. Sure. I reckon it'll be good for both of us. A way to keep moving forward, he said, rising from the porch as the evening darkened around them. And if you need more help than that, just call. Thank you, she said, her heart swelling with gratitude. I didn't expect to feel. That's what sharing can do, he replied, tipping his hat slightly as he mounted his horse. You're stronger than you think, Clara. With that, he rode off, the sound of hooves fading into the dusk. As she watched him disappear down the road, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The porch, once a symbol of heartache, transformed into a canvas waiting for color. As the evening unfolded, Clara began a plan in her mind. She envisioned little pots filled with seeds, shades of green bursting to life under the sun. Each plant would carry a piece of Jake with it, a living testament to the love they had shared. The tears that still fell were different now, tinged with determination. Tomorrow would mark a new beginning. She'd take that first step, not only for herself, but for the love that would always be a part of her. With every passing moment, Clara felt lighter, as if the burdens she carried were loosening their grip. Tomorrow held promise, and for the first time, she looked forward to it. The empty porch was no longer a forgotten space. It was about to be flooded with life, laughter, and memories, a testament to love everlasting. For Clara, the journey was just beginning, and with every seed she planted, she would find a way to bloom amidst the pain. And perhaps, just perhaps, the porch would once again be filled with laughter, evolving into a beautiful reminder that love is never truly lost. It simply takes root in unexpected places, waiting for the sun to shine anew. She wept at an empty porch, the sound of her heart breaking echoing in the stillness of twilight. The sky was ablaze with colors, bold pinks and fiery oranges, fading into deep purples, but all she felt was gray. Each tear fell like a raindrop onto the weathered wood, soaking into the grain, much like the memories that clung stubbornly to this place. This porch had seen joy, laughter, and love, but now it was a stage for sorrow. Leela hugged her knees tightly to her chest, rocking gently as if trying to soothe the ache deep inside. Just weeks ago, this spot was alive with the sound of her husband's laughter, the warmth of his arm draped around her shoulder as they watched the sun set together. But now, empty spaces loomed around her, amplifying the silence that filled her heart. In the distance, the sound of hooves breaking the gravel path caught her attention. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy, to see a tall figure on horseback coming closer. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shielded his face, and as he approached, there was a sense of calm about him that drew her in. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, unsure whether to turn away or offer him a nod. He asked, his voice smooth, deep as the earth itself. She found herself nodding, the weight of her grief making words difficult to form. He dismounted with an easy grace, tying his horse to the railing of the porch before sitting down beside her. It's a beautiful evening, he remarked, glancing at the sunset that painted the sky. The contrast between his tone and her sorrow felt strange, almost jarring. It could be, she sniffed, wiping her cheeks with her sleeve. He nodded, his expression serious yet compassionate. Empty can mean many things. She stared at him, surprise flickering across her features. More than I care to admit, he replied, looking off toward the horizon. I've had my share of loss. It can feel like the world is moving on while you remain stuck in a moment. His words hung in the air between them like a bridge, a tiny connection forged in shared pain. I lost him, she finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. My husband, Ethan, he was. The cowboy shifted, his gaze steady and unyielding. He shifted slightly, leaning in. Sometimes it helps to talk about the ones we've lost. I can't, she whispered, the words choked with grief. You don't have to, he replied kindly. Just tell me what you miss the most. She stared at him, those warm, understanding eyes inviting her in. His laughter, she said slowly, her heart breaking open. We used to sit right here and talk about everything. The cowboy nodded, the warmth in his eyes fading slightly as he absorbed her pain. Grief is like a storm. You think it'll never end, but eventually it will subside. Tears pooled in her eyes again, but this time it was different. What if I don't want to find my footing? Then let yourself feel it, he said softly. Sitting in the storm doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, but remember, storms pass. The wind picked up, swirling around them, whispering secrets of the world that felt beyond reach. She felt a small flicker of hope igniting within her. She asked, curiosity peeking through her grief. He looked out into the distance, lost momentarily in his own thoughts. Because I've walked down that road before. When I lost my brother, I didn't know how to move forward. I spent time wandering, carrying his memory like a stone in my pocket. She asked, intrigued despite herself. Life is about connections, he explained. Remembering who they were, how they lived, and how they made you feel. That's how you carry their spirit with you. Leela turned her gaze to the porch, the memories flooding back like a tide. We dreamed of starting a garden, she said, a smile creeping onto her face despite the sadness. He suggested, his voice laced with enthusiasm. Imagine starting small, a few pots to begin with. Each time you tend to them, you nurture your memories. She looked at him, a mix of disbelief and hope swirling in her chest. I know so, he replied confidently. The world keeps spinning, but you can carve out places where love remains. Tears fell again, but this time they felt lighter, more like drops of rain nourishing the ground beneath. The evening breeze swept through, inviting her to imagine possibilities once again. She said, the doubt creeping in. Then you learn, he said simply. Failure is only a step on the path, she echoed, a spark of determination lighting up her voice. Exactly, he said, nodding encouragingly. You pour love into something and it flourishes in its own way, and if you need help, don't hesitate to ask. The idea settled in her heart, a thrilling notion brimming with potential. Maybe I can start on that garden just to honor Ethan, she mused, feeling warmth in her chest. I'll help you, he said, his smile genuine, lighting up his rugged features. I'll even bring the seeds. She felt gratitude swell within her. Of course, life is about connections after all, he said, a hint of lightness in his tone. The sun sank lower in the sky, casting beautiful golden hues that shimmered around them. As the warmth enveloped her, Leela realized she'd allowed someone who wasn't afraid to explore the storm with her. Thank you, she whispered, the words feeling like a balm to her heart. That's the magic of sharing, he replied, leaning back against the porch, a look of contentment on his face. You're stronger than you think, Leela. The wind shifted, and for the first time she felt the tension releasing its grip. The porch, once a space of despair, was now charged with potential and opened, door beckoning her to step through. Maybe tomorrow, she said, hope flickering. He rose from the porch, dusting off his jeans as darkness began to embrace the world. I'll meet you here then. And just like that, he was gone, riding off into the night, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Leela remained seated, contemplating the path ahead, her heart a swirl of emotions. The night enveloped her like a warm embrace, and she closed her eyes, allowing herself to envision the garden, a vibrant space filled with life. Seeds sprouting, soil welcoming, the scent of flowers blooming. Tomorrow would mark a new beginning, a renewed connection to the world that had felt so gray. She breathed deeply, feeling the wind against her skin, a promise lingering in the air. As she sat on that empty porch, she knew she was no longer alone. With every tear that fell, she was planting seeds of her own, ones that would grow into a life rich with memories and love. And for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face the dawn. Love never truly fades, it simply evolves, waiting for a heart brave enough to nurture it. And in that quiet moment amid her sorrow, she felt the stirrings of hope, the promise of new beginnings waiting just beyond the horizon. Tomorrow she would take that first step, honoring what was lost while embracing what could still be found, a garden of memories waiting to bloom. She wept at an empty porch, the sound of her gentle sobs blending with the rustling leaves of the trees surrounding her home. The evening sky was painted in hues of pink and gold, but here in this moment all she felt was a deep, aching sorrow. Leela sat on the aged wood, knees pulled up to her chest, her heart heavy with memories too painful to bear. The once vibrant porch, the site of countless sunsets shared with laughter, was now shrouded in silence. It was a space once filled with warmth and joy, now stripped down to its bones, echoing the absence of Ethan, the love of her life. She closed her eyes, inhaling the fading scents of early spring, a bitter reminder of the life that had flourished here just months ago. Suddenly, the quiet was interrupted by the sound of hooves crunching on gravel. Startled, Leela looked up to see a cowboy emerging from the dust, a tall figure with a broad frame and a cowboy hat pulled low over his brow. He approached slowly, his horse trailing behind him, a quiet presence against the backdrop of her turmoil. He called out, his voice warm but steady, cutting through the heaviness that surrounded her. His face held a rugged kindness, and for a moment Leela felt as though she could trust him. She nodded silently, barely finding her voice, but something about him felt safe. He settled next to her on the porch, the wood creaking beneath his weight. The cowboy looked out over the vast expanse of fields that stretched endlessly before them. It's a beautiful evening, he noted, though the words felt hollow amid the weight of her distress. It could be, she whispered, her chin trembling as she fought back a fresh wave of tears. Empty can be heavy, he replied, his voice low and understanding, but sometimes sharing that emptiness can lighten the load. His question hit her like a lightning bolt, raw and startling. Unable to control the flood of feelings, she let tears roll down her cheeks. I lost him, she said finally, her voice quaking. My husband, Ethan, he was everything to me. Her voice trailed off, choking on sorrow. The cowboy turned to face her fully, his deep-set eyes filled with genuine empathy. I'm truly sorry. No one understands, she murmured, glancing away. The world keeps spinning, but I feel like I'm trapped in this moment where he's still here. He nodded thoughtfully, the weight of his own unspoken memories hanging in the air. You're not alone in feeling that way, she asked, curiosity mingling with caution. A good friend a few years back, he said, his gaze distant. We rode the range together, always chasing the horizon, sharing dreams and laughter. When he was gone, I felt like a ship lost at sea. She asked, nearly whispering, hanging onto his every word as if they might offer her a lifeline. It wasn't easy, he said, his voice steady yet tinged with sadness. I wandered for a long while, just riding without a destination, but one day I found myself back in the saddle, feeling the wind on my face. She prodded, hope cautiously blooming in her chest. It did, he affirmed, a hint of a smile appearing. Grief is like rain, it can feel heavy at first, but it waters the ground for new beginnings. It reminds us of love, and that love can evolve. Leela felt a tiny flicker of warmth, a sense of light breaking through the heavy fog that had enveloped her heart. But how do I move forward? You don't have to have all the answers right now, he advised gently. Sometimes it's about finding a way to honor their memory. What did you and Ethan love? Ethan and I talked about starting a garden, she confessed, her mind racing through memories of sun-soaked afternoons spent dreaming together. He asked, a smile breaking across his face. Even a small garden can grow into something beautiful. Each time you tend to it, you connect with those dreams you shared. His enthusiasm was contagious, and for the first time she felt a rush of possibility wash over her. I don't know if I can do that alone, she admitted, doubts creeping in, the weight of inexperience tightening its hold. He suggested, leaning back against the porch railing, you'd be surprised how many people care. She considered his words. The idea of gathering friends, of transforming this empty space into something vibrant, was undeniably appealing. She whispered, her heart still caught in hesitation. Then you learn from it, he replied, his voice unwavering. Every garden has its challenges, she confessed, her honesty feeling like a release. You won't forget, Leela, he said, shifting slightly closer so she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Grief isn't about letting go. She wiped away a tear, her heart feeling lighter. The weight of despair was still present, but there was a tiny glimmer of hope weaving its way through her thoughts. Maybe, just maybe I could start that garden, she mused aloud, warmth filling her chest. That's the spirit, he encouraged, his smile wide and reassuring. I'll be here tomorrow if you'd like. Asked, surprise coloring her voice. Absolutely, he replied with genuine sincerity. Life has a crazy way of connecting us. As the sun dipped lower, casting a soft glow around them, Leela felt a renewed spark of determination. Then let's do it. The wind began to pick up, breathing life into the heavy silence, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something shift within her. Hope began to take root. Tomorrow is a new day, he said, standing up from the porch, dusting off his pants. A chance for you to create something beautiful. She nodded, feeling the warmth of his encouragement wrap around her like a cozy blanket. Thank you, she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. That's the magic of sharing, he said, tipping his hat slightly as he turned to leave. Keep looking for the light. With that, he mounted his horse and rode off into the dusk, the sound of hooves fading into the warm evening air. Leela sat there for a moment longer, absorbing the gravity of what had just transpired. The porch, once an empty space filled with sorrow, began to transform in her mind's eye. She envisioned vibrant flowers blooming, vegetables growing, life returning to this cherished place. Tomorrow wouldn't erase Ethan, but it would honor him, the love, the laughter, the dreams they had shared. Feeling the weight of her grief slowly shift, she closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. She would face the dawn, ready to embrace this new journey. Each seed she planted would carry a piece of Ethan with it, love blossoming even in the face of profound loss. The reminder that love endures, that it evolves, settled deep within her heart. And as Leela finally embraced the quiet night, she understood that while grief may linger, hope held a power of its own, one that could bring forth beauty from the ashes of sorrow. Tomorrow she would step into the light, take charge of her garden, and keep her love alive, one tender moment at a time. She wept at an empty porch, the tears cascading down her cheeks like the rain that had begun to fall, a soft, steady drizzle that blurred the world around her. The scent of wet earth mixed with the faint aroma of lilacs wafting in from the garden, yet all she could feel was the weight of absence. The sun had dipped behind the horizon, and the evening sky was a tapestry of deep blues and purples, but the beauty of it seemed too far away, too distant, much like the laughter that once filled the air. Her name was Clara, and this was the porch she had shared with him, her husband Sam, who had left the world far too soon. The memories clung to the wood like a stubborn stain, each board creaking under the weight of her sorrow. Just months ago they had sat here, dreaming together, planning their future, how they would fill the space with flowers, with laughter, and with love. Now it was just her and the echo of what once was. As she stared blankly at the ground, wondering if the ache in her heart would ever dull, a soft sound broke through her sorrow, the rhythmic sound of hooves on gravel. She hesitated for a moment, wiping her tears and peering through the misty air. A figure emerged, a cowboy tall and rugged, his hat casting a shadow over his face. He rode up slowly, the horse snorting and stamping lightly, as if aware of the delicate moment unfolding. He asked, his voice warm but rough, like a well-worn book. There was a kindness in his eyes that drew her, and even in her grief, she found herself nodding. He dismounted with an ease that spoke of years spent in the saddle, tying his horse to the post as he approached. The cowboy settled onto the porch next to her, thoughtful silence stretching between them for a moment as they both stared out into the gathering dusk. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," he said softly, his gaze fixed on her. The sincerity in his voice pulled at something inside her. She could feel the heaviness she carried, but somehow having him there made it feel a little less daunting. "Just emptiness," she replied, her voice trembling. "A few months ago, this place was full of life." She trailed off, the tears welling up again. "You lost someone," he stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation. "Yes," she said, feeling the wave of grief crashing over her again. "My husband, Sam, he was everything to me. Now it feels like the walls are closing in," he finished for her, his expression sympathetic. "I understand." She tilted her head, surprise flickering through her sorrow. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a pain too familiar. "My brother, we spent our lives riding together, chasing sunsets and dreams. The day he was gone, it felt like losing a piece of myself." Clara asked, her heart aching for the pain he had endured. "I learned to ride again," he replied, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "Each ride became a way for me to keep him alive, to honor those memories." Clara felt a flicker of hope glimmering in her chest, a small flame that had been snuffed out for so long. She whispered, feeling the despair creeping back. "Sometimes beginning is the hardest part," he said slowly. "But it's not about moving on, it's about moving forward. Think about what you shared with Sam. We talked about creating a garden," she said, a hint of a smile forming despite the sorrow. He encouraged, leaning closer. "But I don't know how," she admitted, the doubt creeping back. "Failure is just another step in the process," he replied firmly. "Every gardener has faced losses, plants that didn't grow, weeds that overtook their hard work, but each time they learn and try again." His words hung in the air, warm and reassuring as the rain began to fall harder. It felt comforting and cleansing, washing away some of the heaviness she held. Clara breathed deeply, letting the possibilities sink in. "I could honor him that way," she said, feeling a sense of resolve building within her. "Absolutely," he said with a gentle smile. "You'll find the joy of watching something grow, and with it you can keep Sam's memory alive." Tears glistened in her eyes, but this time they were tears of hope rather than despair. She asked, searching his eyes for sincerity. "I do. Love doesn't disappear, it transforms into something new. And you'll find that the garden you create can bring joy and healing," he replied, his voice steady and clear. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh earth and blooms. Clara sat quietly, lost in thought, allowing the fire of determination to ignite within her. "I want to do it," she said finally, her voice trembling with newfound confidence. The cowboy's smile widened, illuminating his rugged features. "Then let's make it happen," she asked, disbelief washing over her. "Of course," he said, rising from the porch, dusting off his knees. "Life is meant to be shared, especially the tough parts." As he walked back toward his horse, Clara felt a warmth swell in her chest, an ember now crackling softly with hope. "Thank you," she said. "I reckon I do," he said, looking over his shoulder with a grin. With that, he rode off into the night, the hooves fading into the rhythm of the evening. Clara remained on the porch, her heart swelling with promise and possibility. She glanced around at the empty yard, imagining it transformed, filled with colors and life, laughter and memories that she could nurture and grow into something beautiful. The rain began to slow, leaving behind a soft drizzle, and for the first time in weeks, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. Maybe, just maybe, she could turn the pain of loss into something meaningful, a space where love could continue to thrive. As darkness settled in, Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the sense of damp earth and blooming flowers imaginable around her. Tomorrow would be the day she began her journey, a step toward healing that she could finally take. The porch, once an empty shell, could be a vibrant reminder. Every seed she planted would be a living testament to the love she had lost, yet also the love that would continue to grow. With renewed determination, she sat under the stars, ready to embrace the dawn of a new beginning, where grief and love intertwined like vines, each a part of the garden she would cultivate. And as the moon shone brightly overhead, Clara felt a warmth in her heart, ready to nurture healing along with the growth of new life. She was no longer just a woman weeping on an empty porch. She was about to become a gardener of memories, watering seeds of hope amid the shadows. Tomorrow would bring new light. It was time to allow the love that lingered in her heart to blossom anew. She wept at an empty porch, her sobs echoing into the waning light. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the yard, but all she could feel was a heavy emptiness. The year had been relentless, and the weight of grief settled deep within her bones. Leela hugged her knees to her chest, rocking slightly as if to soothe the ache within. Just weeks ago, this porch had been full of life and laughter, a place where she and her husband, Adam, would sit as they watched the stars bloom in the night sky. But now it was merely wood and memories, the laughter replaced by silence, the warmth by an icy void. The evening air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, drifting lazily as the breeze played through the leaves of the old oak tree. She looked out over the yard, where weeds began to creep into areas they had once tended together. A pair of wildflowers, their vibrant petals a stark contrast to her sorrow, stood defiantly amongst the chaos, and she couldn't help but envy their resilience. Just then, the familiar sound of hooves struck the gravel path, pulling Leela from the depths of her thoughts. She blinked back her tears, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand as she turned her head. The cowboy appeared, tall and stooped slightly, his silhouette sharp against the evening colors. The moment felt surreal, like a scene pulled straight from a dream. He asked, his voice deep and steady. There was something calming about the way he spoke, as if he carried the weight of the world yet refused to let it crush him. She blinked at him, hesitating, but the weariness in her chest made her nod. The cowboy stepped onto the porch, the old boards creaking underfoot, and he found a spot beside her. They sat in silence, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves as dusk settled in. His gaze lingered on the empty yard, the fading light illuminating the remnants of life that used to fill it. I lost someone, she began slowly, her throat tightening around the words. My husband, Adam, he died suddenly. I'm sorry to hear that, he replied quietly, his tone holding a depth of understanding. She looked sideways at him, his rugged face softened by the gentleness in his eyes. She asked, a hint of defiance in her voice. I lost my father last year, he replied, a shadow crossing his features. It took everything out of me for a while. His honesty caught her off guard. She asked, intrigued. I rode, he answered, the corners of his lips curling just slightly, for miles and miles. She listened intently, captivated by the sincerity in his voice. Not completely, he said, shaking his head slowly. It changes, though. It becomes a part of you, something you learn to navigate. The cowboy turned and looked her in the eyes, something fierce and kind about his gaze. What did you and Adam love? Gardening, she said, her voice trembling as she spoke. We used to spend our weekends here, planting flowers and growing vegetables. Then maybe it's time to start that again, he suggested, his voice steady and encouraging. She said, the doubt sneaking back in. Every gardener faces challenges, he replied, leaning forward, a spark of passion in his voice. Plants don't just bloom overnight, they require patience and care. You may not get it right the first time, but you learn and grow along the way. She felt her heart racing, the rush of possibilities swirling. Maybe I could, she whispered, glancing around the empty yard. Exactly, he enthused, a genuine smile breaking across his face. The sincerity in his offer glinted in the fading light. He seemed like more than just a wanderer on a horse. He was a vessel carrying echoes of history and strength. Thank you, she said, the warmth of gratitude coursing through her. Of course, he replied, his expression sincere. As the stars began to flicker to life against the darkening sky, Leela felt something shift deep within her, a flicker of hope igniting where despair had taken root. Tomorrow, she said, her voice strong and resolute. That's the spirit, he replied, clearly pleased. In that moment, the porch transformed from a deserted space of sorrow into a budding canvas of hope. She realized that perhaps in this stranger she had found a friend, someone willing to sit with her in her pain and help her cultivate joy amid the shadows. But before she could say anything more, a sudden shrill cry broke through the stillness, tearing through the evening air. Both Leela and the cowboy turned, eyes wide in surprise. It came again, nearer this time, the unmistakable sound of distress, a voice calling loudly for help. Leela asked, heart racing. Yes, he replied, urgency creeping into his tone. Without a second thought, they sprang to their feet, their earlier calm replaced by adrenaline. The cowboy glanced back at Leela, an expression of determination on his face. Stay close. They raced down the gravel path, the soft thud of their footsteps creating a rhythm against the backdrop of the night. Each step took Leela further from the safety of her porch and deeper into the unknown, where the weight of fear began creeping back in. The cries grew louder as they approached, and as they turned a corner, the scene unfolded before them. An overturned wagon lay half in the ditch, the horse panicking, whinnying as it struggled against the traces. Nearby, a figure was bent awkwardly at an unnatural angle, trying to crawl away but clearly in pain. The voice cried out, trembling with desperation. Without hesitating, the cowboy rushed toward the figure on the ground, his instincts kicking in. He shouted, trying to assess the situation. She stood frozen for a moment, caught between fear and the undeniable urge to help. The sight of the injured figure sent her heart racing, filling her with dread. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as she took in the scene. She asked, her voice shaking. It fell, my horse fell, the figure gasped, clenching their jaw against the pain. The cowboy knelt beside the injured person, scrutinizing the situation. We need to get you help, he said firmly, but his expression softened as he looked at the person. Just breathe, please, the figure said weakly, tears pooling in their eyes as they looked at Leela. I can't. Leela's heart sank, her mind racing. This was a moment when everything hung in the balance, where fear battled with the instinct to act. The cowboy looked up at her, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They had to do something, but time was of the essence, and the panic surrounding them was palpable. He asked Leela, determination blazing in his eyes. Leela nodded, her heart pounding, adrenaline now coursing through her veins. She rushed to the cowboy's side, and together they lifted the person carefully, easing them away from the wreckage. But just as they managed to secure the injured figure, another cry echoed through the night. A voice rang out, familiar. The sound of her name sent a jolt through her, and she turned suddenly, spotting a figure appearing down the road. Adam's voice called, more urgent than ever. She gasped in disbelief, his face lighting up with concern. The universe had twisted in a bizarre way, throwing her past and present together in a chaotic dance. She hadn't seen him since that awful day, the day everything changed. But before she could take a step toward him, another scream pierced the air, bringing her back to the moment, back to the wounded stranger in her arms and the cowboy who had been there with her through it all. The world spun around her, confusion and pain swirling together into a storm she had never imagined. Would the cowboy's presence become her anchor amidst this chaos, or would the return of her husband drown her in questions and doubts? As her heart raced, Leela stood at the precipice of two worlds, teetering dangerously between grief and the memories that rushed back like a tidal wave. The cowboy's hand gripped her shoulder, steady and strong, reminding her of the life she had begun to reclaim. And then both the cries for help and the voice of her husband echoed in her ears, intertwining in a whirlwind of emotions, weaving into a tapestry of past and present. She was left stranded, caught in a moment that held the power to change everything. What would she choose? Would the porch and its potential future survive the flood of emotions crashing into her? As the night deepened around her, Leela faced the tumult of love, loss, and the reawakening of everything she thought she had lost forever. The night had only just begun.